Damascus has gone from axis of evil to axis of let's make a deal faster than you can say regime change. Meow that Bashar al-Assad's been given the boot. Suddenly Syria's the hottest ticket in town for US diplomats. It's like Syria's gone through a geopolitical version of Extreme Makeover Middle East edition. 1 minute you're a pariah state, the next you're hosting tea parties for the Yanks. Just 12 days after rebel forces stormed into Damascus and sent Assad packing to Moscow, a delegation of senior American officials has touched down in the Syrian capital. Leading the charge is Barbara Leaf, Assistant Secretary of State for Near Eastern Affairs, who's probably wondering if she should have packed her How to Negotiate with Former Terrorists for Dummies handbook. It's the first time US diplomats have set foot in Damascus since the civil war kicked off way back in 2011. One day you're a pariah state, the next you're throwing welcome parties for the Yanks. Politics, am I right? But let's not get too excited about this sudden burst of American hospitality. The US isn't there to admire the local architecture or sample the shawarma. Meow, they've got two main items on their to-do list: addressing the humanitarian crisis that's left over 14 million Syrians in need of aid, and trying to track down Austin Tice, the American journalist who's been missing since 2012. It's nice to see the government remembering about its missing citizens after only a decade or so. I guess better late than never, unless you're the one who's been missing for 12 years. Speaking of humanitarian crises, the numbers are staggering, my friends. We're talking about 1.1 million newly displaced people since Assad's regime collapsed. That's on top of the millions already scattered to the wind by years of conflict. Over 3 million Syrians have fled to Turkey alone. It's like a game of musical chairs, but instead of chairs, it's entire countries, and instead of music, it's the sound of artillery fire. But here's where things get really interesting. The US diplomats aren't just chatting with the new government, they're also planning to sit down with Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, or HTS for short. Meow, if that name doesn't ring a bell, here's a quick history lesson. HTS used to be the al-Nusra Front, which was Al-Qaeda's Syrian branch. One day they woke up and decided, you know what? Being associated with Al-Qaeda is bad for our image. Let's rebrand. And just like that, they went from terrorists to, well, still terrorists, according to the US government's official naughty list. It's like HTS went through the geopolitical equivalent of a corporate rebrand. One day you're Al-Qaeda's troublesome cousin. The next you're the hip new startup everyone wants to invest in. But here's the kicker. The Biden administration is thinking about taking HTS off that list. One day you're a terrorist, the next you're a lunch date. It's like a geopolitical version of The Bachelor, but instead of roses, they're handing out diplomatic recognition. HTS has gone from seeking global jihad to looking for meaningful dialogue and long walks on the beach faster than you can swipe right on Tinder. Why the sudden change of heart? Well, it turns out HTS has been busy playing government in the areas they control. They've swapped their black flags for more neutral symbols and started focusing on things like garbage collection instead of global jihad. It's amazing what a little rebranding can do for your image. Suddenly, they're the cool kids at the geopolitical lunch table and everyone's scrambling to be their new best friend. Of course, not everyone's thrilled about this potential makeover. Some folks are worried that cozying up to HTS might legitimize a group with a rather, shall we say, colourful past. It's a bit like inviting the school bully to the prom because he promised to stop stealing lunch money. The implications of this engagement are huge, potentially reshaping regional politics and aid distribution. It's like watching a high-stakes poker game where the pot is regional influence and everyone's trying to bluff their way to victory. But let's not forget why we're really here. Austin Tice, the former Marine-turned-journalist, has been missing for over 12 years. Meow. That's longer than some celebrity marriages last. Tice disappeared while reporting in Damascus in August 2012, and his case has been a priority for multiple US administrations. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken has made it clear that finding Tice is the #1 priority. It's like the US government suddenly remembered they left the stove on for 13 years. Meow, if you're as baffled by this diplomatic whiplash as I am, my friends, hit that subscribe button. We'll keep you updated on this geopolitical soap opera. If you thought keeping up with the Kardashians was hard, try keeping up with the ever-changing cast of characters in the Syrian saga. Meanwhile, in Damascus, the The city's gone through more dramatic transformations than a house on Fixer Upper. Let's hope this makeover lasts longer than a coat of paint. The streets are filled with celebrations as citizens paint shop facades white in a symbol of peace. But it's not all shawarma and dabki dancing. The new government, led by caretaker Prime Minister Mohammed al-Bashir, faces the daunting task of rebuilding a country shattered by over a decade of conflict. It's like they've inherited a fixer-upper that's been through a category 5 hurricane, an earthquake, and a plague of locusts. And let's not forget the other players in this Middle Eastern chess game. Turkey's trying to manage the return of Syrian refugees, Israel's conducting airstrikes to prevent weapons from falling into the wrong hands, and Iran and Russia are probably wondering if they backed the wrong horse. Keeping track of who's friends with whom in the Middle East is like trying to understand the plot of Game of Thrones after skipping 6 seasons. As for the US, they're suddenly very interested in Syria's welfare. It's amazing how quickly a country can go from axis of evil to new phone who dis in international diplomacy. The potential for reconstruction aid and investment is huge, but so are the challenges. It's like trying to put Humpty Dumpty back together again, but Humpty Dumpty is an entire country and all the king's horses and all the king's men are too busy arguing over who gets to sit at the cool kids' table. So there you have it, my friends. In the span of 2 weeks, Syria has gone from international pariah to the belle of the diplomatic ball. It's a reminder that in the world of geopolitics, today's enemy can be tomorrow's ally, or at least tomorrow's awkward coffee date. Let's just hope this particular date doesn't end with anyone getting ghosted for another 12 years. Thanks for tuning in to Newscats. I'm Ron DeParmesan.